Hi, today we're going to talk about the universal basic income and why I think as a policy its time has come. So the universal basic income, or UBI, is similar to the pension, would be paid to all Kiwis aged 18 and over, whether they're in work or not, and would be paid as a supplement to working income. And for those who don't have a job or don't have income, it would effectively be replacing the dole. So it's kind of a policy that replaces a number of existing policies like the pension, like the dole, like various WINS payments, job seeker payments, etc. And it's kind of all rolled up into one, this UBI. Okay, why do I think is a good time for the UBI? Basically, we've seen the economy change a lot over the last 10, 20 years as technology has really ramped up. And we hear a lot about the gig economy. We see a lot of particularly younger people in part-time work or project-related work. A lot of people are having to retrain. So the UBI effectively helps deal with that situation where people may not have full-time employment. They may be training for a period of time. Again, it would replace the student allowance. So it's sort of an all-encompassing policy which can help deal with some of these issues that we have in the modern economy. Secondly, in this COVID environment we're in, clearly we're going to see, unfortunately, a steep rise in unemployment globally. And effectively, the government of New Zealand have already started down a UBI light path. They've introduced a wage subsidy. They've also increased the payments on the benefits. And effectively, what they're doing is they're not targeting that welfare. That's a universal income. And it's basically a UBI light. So we're already seeing that from the response from the government post the COVID, in their COVID response. Okay, so what amount would a UBI be? That's a very good question. So I think the analysis that sort of I've worked on here is around about $400 Kiwi dollars per week, or $20,000 per annum. Clearly that's not a lot of money if somebody's living on that and that's all they have. Hopefully they would have other income to supplement that. But also a very simple policy. So if you were in a married couple situation, it would be twice that amount. Unlike the pension at the moment, which, as we know, has this rather odd sort of married couple rate, which even tripped up Winston Peters, the Minister of Pensions at the time. So it's a very simple policy, $400 a week for 50 weeks a year, basically $20,000 per annum. Okay, what are the advantages of a UBI? I see really three main advantages of UBI. The first one is an effective marginal tax rate. So most welfare is actually targeted welfare. So while that's good intentions to target those people who need that income, the problem is when they get out of that situation, it's a very regressive or very ferocious tax rate, in fact. So someone who's earning, say, $50,000 and they went up to, say, $80,000, a reasonable jump, unfortunately, they would lose 25 cents in the dollar on any existing WINS payments that were help supplementing that lower income in the first place. They would then pay tax on that additional money. Anything over $70,000, for example, is taxed at 30 cents in the dollar. So a combination of those two, they're already at 55 cents in the dollar. When you add in childcare costs, travel costs, etc., becomes very, very high tax rate and effectively makes it quite difficult for some people to take on this further work. They might decide it wasn't worth their interest to do that. And so effectively it locks people into locks them into welfare, effectively. So the first major advantage of a UBI is everybody would get that. Any additional income you have, you would just pay the tax rate on that, which would be nowhere near that 55-60%. In some cases, in fact, with WINS payments at the moment, the effective marginal tax rate is over 100%. That's correct. And there are some situations, it's slightly odd numbers, but it's actually over 100%, which is just extraordinary. So clearly no one would take that work in that situation. Okay, another advantage of the UBI is it gets stimulus in the economy immediately. So as I mentioned before, we've already seen a UBI light coming out of the government. So with monetary policy so low now, we've got rates of zero basically across the globe. So monetary policy is no longer a tool that we can use to help stimulate the economy. It really all needs to come from fiscal policy. So by introducing a UBI, you immediately get cash into the pockets of people. They can then spend that how they choose. So obviously in this current environment, a lot of people are choosing to use it to pay the food. There's some concern about what the economy is going to look like, pay their rent, etc. But further down the track, hopefully that cash flow will start to recirculate into local businesses. The third thing, major advantage that I really like is it's a very simple policy. So it replaces a whole lot of different types of welfare, as we mentioned. It removes the stigma of somebody going into a WINS office, for example, and asking for their payment or dole payment, those aggressive situations we've seen. There's no need for that because everybody, in fact, will receive the UBI. And in addition, there's a lot of government bureaucracy currently determining what those WINS payments are. So I would argue those people they could be pointing their resources in a more productive way for the economy than determining how much money a particular person's circumstances warrant they should receive. It's a very simple policy: $400 a week, $20,000 a year. Everyone gets it, and you get to keep a lot more of the additional income that you earn. So those are the three main advantages. Okay, is there any disadvantage? Well, unfortunately, it's expensive. So we estimate that there's around 4 million Kiwis aged 18 and over in New Zealand. So 4 million Kiwis at $20,000 per year is $80 billion. That's right, $80 billion. So last year, full year for the New Zealand government, our total tax take was $80 billion. So you can see that all of the tax take would be consumed by this one UBI policy, and then you've still got to pay for your healthcare, law and order, education, etc. So unfortunately, taxes have to rise to pay for it, but by bringing in the UBI, you are reducing the pension, which is around $13 billion a year, other job seeker, WINS payments, etc., another $12-13 billion a year. You've also got a lot of efficiencies in the system, but even if we ignore those efficiencies, you've got a gap in the system of about $50 billion. So what I'm proposing is personal tax rates would go up to 33% and a flat tax rate. You don't actually need this progressive tax rate because everybody's earning that base $20,000, which would be tax-free, by the way. So at 33%, everybody earns 67 cents out of every dollar they earn, whether they are a millionaire or whether they're just starting out. They get to keep 67 cents in the dollar. Okay, secondly, corporate tax rate would have to rise, so we would equalise that with that 33%. So corporate tax rate 28 to 33%. Finally, a small rise in GST as well not that small, 15 to 25%, and that captures a large amount of money. So basically, the move in personal tax rate takes it from 34 billion in revenues to 60 billion. The move in the company tax rate from 28 to 33 takes its take from 13 up to 20, and the move in GST from 15 to 25 goes from 20 to 35. So those three things combined would actually pay for the UBI. Okay, I hope you found that useful. Those are my thoughts on the UBI, and I think it's a policy whose time has come. Thanks.